Hello.
Thank you.
Hello, is this on? Oh, it is, good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Lane, and I am the head of digital strategy for Bon Appetit and Epicurious, also known as the Food Innovation Group. The gentleman sitting next to me on this chair probably needs no introduction whatsoever, but we're going to give him one anyway. Tom Colicchio, who I would normally call chef, by the way, based on my personal training, but if I do that, I'm afraid I might wind up getting eliminated from this panel talk, so I'm going to go by Tom. Co-founder and executive chef of Gramercy Tavern over 20 years ago, current owner of Craft Bar, Craft Steak, Witchcraft, Colicchio & Sons, Topping Rose House in Bridgehampton, New York, and Tom Colicchio's Heritage Steak in Las Vegas. By a show of hands, how many have been to one of these restaurants? Yes, of course.
I like that. That's good.
I've been to all of them. You have?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite?
No, I don't have a favorite. That's like asking me if I have a favorite, child, and maybe I do, but I'm not going to admit to that.
Okay, fair enough. We'll ask him again later. Okay, so restaurateur, James Beard, Top Chef Award recipient, and probably one of the only chefs who's won an Emmy.
Yes, I have an Emmy.
So
no, actually, Anthony Bourdain has a slew of them.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he does, and there's some. I think there's some daytime, but not a primetime Emmy.
Oh.
One with a primetime Emmy. They have the creative arts Emmys and the daytime stuff, but not night. Yeah. Primetime's different.
And not a producer either.
Right.
Okay, good. So I'm glad we clarified. How did this all begin? There might be someone out here who has aspirations of being a chef, a restaurateur, an Emmy-winning executive producer. How did this all begin?
God, so it all began when I was about 13 or so, 12, 13. I just found that I loved to cook. A story that I have in my book about how I learned to use salt, and I think I was about 10 or 11, so I was probably cooking before 13. But I remember my parents belonged to a Italian-American swim club, okay, in Clark, New Jersey. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, about 20 minutes outside of New York. And I remember there were some grills up in the picnic area, and there was a cooler that my parents packed, and there were these club steaks, these small little steak things. And so I decided that the fire was going, and it was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was going to throw a steak on the grill. Now, I've seen people do this before, so I figured, how difficult can this be? I put a steak on the grill, and it didn't taste very good. So there was some salt on one of the picnic tables, and I put a little salt on it. I was like, wow, that's so much better. And so I cooked another steak, because I thought, well, let's see what happens now if I put salt on before I cook it. And I put it on, and it was like, wow, this is really good. I figured, why not a third one? So I put a third one on. Well, right around this time, my dad walked up there to see what I was doing and realized that I pretty much just, ate most of the family's meal that evening. He was quite a little pissed off at me. So that was one of my earliest memories of cooking. I used to bake a lot at home. I didn't love it, but when I was about 15, my dad suggested I become a chef. And as a 15-year-old, typically you don't listen to your parents. It was one of the few times I actually perked up and said, wow, that's interesting. Okay. And so I started cooking right out of high school. Well, the first job I had cooking was at that same swim club. I had there was a concessionaire, like a little lunch concession, and the guy who was running it hired me to scoop ice cream and work the cash register, and within a week I was cooking. So I was doing like grilled cheese and hamburgers and stuff like that. Best job I ever had in my life, because I was about 14 or 15 years old. He would pick me up in the morning, and a couple days into it, I realized that this guy picked me up and he was just freshly stoned. I mean, it was no doubt about it. And so, a couple days into it, I finally said, "Listen, you could share." And so, and he did. And so I would work in a pair of cutoffs, maybe flip-flops, never a shirt, and cook. And and he was paying me $275 a week under the table. So at 15 years old, this is a pretty good gig, yeah. So that was it. Yeah.
I was the lifeguard around the pool, making nowhere near that, but what can I say?
Yeah.
Look where I am today.
Well, see, that's just it. I figured cooking was better than me, because I was a lifeguard too. But I figured the cooking gig was better than the lifeguard gig. So
yeah. I mean, I would say like the skills that you learn in cooking, it's the one you can use for life. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody started having a heart attack, whether or not I'd really be able to help you right now. but actually you do have some of those skills. If I recall correctly, didn't I read somewhere that you actually saved someone's life during a dining experience?
Yes, I did. This was Obama's first inauguration in Washington. There was a woman named Joan Nathan, who's a cookbook author.
Yes.
And she was having a party. They were doing a series of dinners in people's homes, but this was the kickoff to it. So there were chefs paired up at different homes, and we were cooking meals, but this was the first one. And there were a lot of people in the news around, people from CNN and MSNBC, which happened to be there. And I was standing in the doorway talking to someone, and I looked to my right, and I saw Joan sort of, I was in the kitchen was here, and there was a hallway. And I looked to my right, and I saw Joan, two people slapping her on the back. And so I walked over, I took a few steps, I put my arms around her, I said, "Can you talk?" She went like this. I gave her the Heimlich once, nothing happened. Tried a second time, chicken flew out. She was fine. And I just said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." I walked away. And that was it. 10 minutes later, my wife, who I guess has an alert on her phone, like she called me and she said, "What are you doing?" It automatically got out there in the news, but it was funny because then there was a story after that about how it didn't happen, and I never confirmed it or not. There was a story that somebody else burst into the room and said, "Who knows the Heimlich? Joan's dying," and I said, "I do," and ran. That's not what happened, but...
So you were not wearing a cape?
I was not, and I didn't step into a phone booth before I actually... But you know what's really cool? I got a letter from Dr. Heimlich. There is an actual Dr. Heimlich, and so I got a letter from him, which was pretty cool.
That's cool.
It was cool, yeah.
Does it come with like a badge or a pin or...
No. It came with a certificate, though.
It did?
It did come with a certificate, yes. Yeah, no badge or pin. Yeah. This is a true story.
It's great. No, doing some research before I decided I was going to sit down with you, and I looked, and there it is on your Wikipedia page.
Right, but I didn't. And the funny thing was, no one taught me how to do that. I mean, this is something you learn from watching commercials or watching, TV or something, some procedural doctor's TV thing. It was like, I can do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not?
They didn't teach that to me in culinary school.
No. Our lifeguard school.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about restaurants. Sure. You know a lot about restaurants. You own some of the greatest in the country. What makes a great restaurant? I think everybody in this room has been to a restaurant. We have some restaurants that we love. We have some restaurants that we've been to that have been critically acclaimed. But I guess there's a sense that there's more to it than just that.
It's a good question because I think if you asked 20 restaurateurs, you probably get different answers from most of them. I think that people say food's important. Of course, food's important. People say service, and probably hospitality is the most important thing. If you feel good about the restaurant, you'll come back to the restaurant. But I think it starts with the planning stages and finding something that is unique, but also following through on that concept. Really being committed to it and following through, but also being willing to make certain changes very quickly. So, for instance, when we opened Craft, and Craft was kind of a different restaurant. It was fine dining, but we were serving stuff family style. People were helping themselves, and things were a large portion, but meant to be shared. And in the first menu, we had a condiment section. There was a meat section, a fish section, a vegetable section, potatoes. But then we had condiments and sauces, and that confused the hell out of people. So very, very quickly, within a week, we changed that. And so we weren't so stuck with our concept that we weren't willing to change it, and we made those changes, and then it was easier for people to understand. The other thing we did is we fell into the habit of telling people about the experience. Like, this is what you can do, this is what you should do. And in about 2 or 3 weeks, we said, just stop it. Just put the menu down and walk away from the table. People understand this. But I think that there's so many moving parts, and I think to be successful, it's very easy to say the customer comes first, and we actually say our staff comes first. We have to treat our staff well. There's so many different restaurants and so many different places you can work, but we treat our team really well, and they'll treat our guests well, and you have to have that first. Without having that, it just doesn't work. You can't treat your people poorly, and expect them to go out and then treat the guests the way that you want. So you have to lead by example. But really, hospitality and service and hospitality are two different things. There are restaurants that technically the service is flawless, but they're just not very hospitable. And so hospitality is something where you have a genuine desire to make someone happy. If you walk into my office, we have it's not this big, but if you walk in, we have an open floor plan. The first thing you see when you walk in red lettering, says make people happy. And so we figure if we can do that, people are going to come back. They'll tell other people that they had this great experience. And typically, whenever you have a problem in the restaurant, someone doesn't like something, that's when you have a chance to actually win them over, because you can fix that. Because typically, I mean, how many times have you been to a restaurant and you get something you don't like? And then the big question is, should I say something or not? Most of the times you don't. But then someone's going to go on Twitter and say, I had a bad experience. Like, well, I can't do anything for you now. If you were in the restaurant and you spoke up, I can help you. I can't do it after the fact. And so, but it's how does the restaurant respond to the problem? That actually determines, to me, whether a restaurant's great or not. I'll give you an example. When we were opening Gramercy Tavern, prior to Danny and I agreeing that we were going to work together, we decided to take a trip and travel around. And we were in France, and we went to one restaurant in Paris, and they had a very famous dish with langostino lentil soup, and there was this fried celery leaves as a garnish. And when I tasted it, I was like, the celery leaves were either left out or cooked in rancid oil, and I just, you know the flavor right away as soon as you get it. We didn't make a fuss. The waiter came over and said, well, something's wrong with the dish. Explained what was wrong. Came back out, put the dish right back down and said, the chef said there's nothing wrong with this. Okay. So when it came time to order dessert and cheese and dessert, we just said, you know what, we'll just take the bill and we'll leave. And a couple restaurants after that, we were out in the countryside at a 3-star Michelin restaurant, and they had this dish of chanterelles with a licorice root sauce, very simple dish. Waiter came over, said, how is it? We said, really, really good, but the mushrooms are a little gritty. And that was it. I didn't send him back. I just, said a little gritty. He came back over and said, the chef agrees, says they're gritty. He doesn't like to wash them in water. He likes to just kind of scrape them, which I understand. He put them in water and it kind of dilutes the flavor, and apologized. And then they sent out an extra course that we didn't order. And then the next course we didn't order, they made sure, so from after that happened, they just made sure that they made up for it. But apologized for it and said, yeah, we agree, and then just took care of it. And that's the difference between great hospitality. These are both 3-star Michelin restaurants, but the difference between great hospitality and just a 3-star restaurant. And so one restaurant, we felt taken care of.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something that's across every industry. If you have a great culture inside the organization that aspiring to please the customer, that should set you up for success. So when you're concepting these restaurants and you're looking strategically at the dishes and the menus, what's important there?
Oh God. Okay, so typically when I'm working on a menu for a new restaurant, let's just say we have a restaurant opening in Miami in March probably, and I just worked on the menu. So I try to figure out the season, obviously, to figure out what produce and stuff I'm going to use. But then it's about what I feel like eating, what I feel like cooking. It's nothing more than that. I don't have any strategy. I try not to replicate myself. So if I'm using asparagus in one dish, I don't want to use it in 3 dishes. If I'm using peas, again, so I try to spread everything around, especially produce, and because that's where I think flavor comes from when you're building a dish. But I don't typically think of I got to put something on the menu with a low food cost and sell a lot of that, so I make more money on this one dish. Yeah. I don't have those strategies. I'm not that good yet. Okay. No, it's typically what am I in the mood for? So this restaurant is obviously it's a farm to table concept, which to me means really nothing because everything grows on a farm and ends up on a table. It's what happens in between. That's kind of important. Fork to mouth concept. Yeah, that's a little better. It does go on a fork unless you're eating with your hands, but that's fine too. Or chopsticks. It's this all doesn't mean a whole lot. But really focusing on produce. Typically we look at a menu, and at least 80 to 90% of the menu, when I source it, I want to know who's growing it. Right. And to me, that's what's really important. It's just I want to know the people behind the food. I want to know that it's right now, all of our restaurants, with the exception of one in Las Vegas, all the meat's antibiotic-free. I think it's really important. We are typically looking to purchase as much organic food as possible, and we are in the process of looking for all non-GMO sources, which gets a little more difficult when it comes to sugar. and flour. Those are the two big things. But you find organic sources, you know it's GMO free. But obviously, when you're doing that, it pushes the prices way up.
Yeah.
But these are, you know, this stuff's important to me. Besides the restaurant stuff, I do a lot of stuff around food policy, and I have a hard time asking people to do one thing and then not doing the same thing. So
that's interesting. So as we look across the American population, I think the appreciation for quality of food has certainly risen in the course of your career, and I think the palate has also shifted. I think people are eating a lot different things now than we might have. From your perspective, is there any one thing that, like, under no circumstances could I have ever put that on a plate 15 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever?
Yeah, well, I think what happens is this sort of experiment of a melting pot that as America just keeps growing and bubbling over. Obviously, cultures are starting to spill over, and we're starting to try different things. But I think that is just again, as our recent immigrants come into the country, they bring their food, they bring their culture, they bring everything with them, and so it gets out there, and you have chefs that are actually, you know, American chefs that are messing around with a lot of these different, you know, ethnic ingredients, and it's just kind of this cross-pollination of stuff that just makes up for great American cuisine. And so I think that as chefs broaden their horizons and try more things, the general public is open to more and different and varied things. I mean, I think there's a wider acceptance of the ingredients, but I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't see much of a change from 20 years ago. I just see more people involved. Back 20 years ago, there were just fewer people who were willing to try sea urchin and, you know, sort of Scottish game that is really, you know, strong. And, you know, I'm thinking Scottish game like it's this time of the year for it. But now more and more people are willing to try it. So it's just, I think it's just more people are interested in food. I mean, obviously, food has become more of a you know, culturally accepted, but also more in sort of pop culture. There's food is, you know, it's part of pop culture, and it's changed a lot. So people are just more open because you're just being bombarded with either media, food and media. You know, it used to be a handful of magazines, and now there's a lot more. But there's, you know, just look at the proliferation of food TV, and you look at Andrew Zimmern traveling the world eating some really bizarre stuff, but a lot of it really isn't that bizarre. You know, 2/3 of the world eats insects, and so how bizarre really is it?
Has anyone in the audience eaten an insect recently? One. Well, so you see opportunity. Two. Okay.
There's this great new power bar, energy bar, or called XO. Anybody see this out there? Maybe with cricket powder. Okay, I sit on this board of this accelerator, and we look at various food products. You know, quarterly we're looking at new products, and we kind of help launch them. And I was dead set against this company when I walked into the meeting. I had all of my materials. I'm like, crickets, I don't do bugs. I'm just not into it. But I said, I'll keep an open mind. And right before that, I realized that the CGI, the Clean Global Initiative, they made $1 million grant to a group of people out in Toronto who were coming up with solutions to the sort of protein problem that we're having in the world. And I was like, maybe there's something about this cricket thing, so I'll keep an open mind. I tried it, and it was absolutely delicious. And so I said, you know what, if they're coming up with a solution to protein that help feed the growing population in this world, if it tastes good, I'm sold. And it was great, so I recommend it, yeah.
Yeah,
Crickets are good. Crickets are okay.
I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit more comfortable with knowing that they're eating a protein source that, while it might be an insect, I don't think anybody in this room has ever drank a glass of partially hydrogenated soybean oil. Yet that seems to be in a lot of food as well.
Good point. Great point. Yeah, but also it's a powder, like a flour, so you don't have like antennas and eyes and legs sticking out. Yeah.
That would be unsightly.
Although I was in Mexico a month ago, and we had some crickets. Whole crickets, you know, tacos, cricket tacos.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crunchy?
Good stuff. Yeah. Put enough hot sauce on it, it'll taste great.
Everything's better with a little sauce. Okay, so I think I've seen you on TV, and you seem to be into your 12th season of a very popular show.
12 seasons, yeah.
Is everybody watch this show that I'm referring to? Yes. So I know I'm not allowed to ask you anything about who might be winning, but...
No, I'll answer any question except there's two questions I won't answer around the show. Who wins this season? And I won't comment on the dating habits of my lovely co-host. But everything else is free, open, completely open.
I have never dated her. Just so after 12 seasons, how many chefs have come through the show? Over 120, I guess it would be, or
on average 16 a year. So someone do the math. I don't know.
Okay. So has there ever been the unsung hero, the one that boy, you were really rooting for them and they just didn't pull it off?
No. I don't root for anyone. I'm not a fan.
Okay.
I have a job to do there, and I try to be as impartial as possible. And so all of that crazy stuff that goes on behind the scenes, if you watch the show, the reality stuff, we're not privy to that at all. We have no idea it's happening. We don't want to know. We're not there when it's happening. We interact with the chefs when they're cooking, when I do a walkthrough in the kitchen, when we're eating their food, or they're at judge's table. That's it. When I'm not on camera, I'm nowhere near that set. Trust me. But so I don't have an interest. I don't really care who wins.
Right.
So no.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're also working on another project, and I have to be clear, in full transparency, this is a partnership with Bon Appetit and Bravo, so we're not shilling here, but tell us about the... Okay,
sure
we're shamelessly shilling.
Sure we are.
Tell us about the program. I'm not going to say a word.
Best New Restaurant. It's a reality competition where it's restaurants against restaurants. So it's the chef and front of house and management and a couple of cooks, and we have a series of challenges. And we just finished shooting, and I think it's going to be good. It's hard to say. You never know. And I haven't seen. Bravo won't send me a copy out of the first episode. So, but I hear it's really good. Okay. But it actually felt pretty good doing it. Obviously, having done a few, 12 seasons now of Top Chef, I kind of know what to expect out of production. And looking back to the first season of Top Chef, we had no idea what the hell we were doing. But it felt right, and just the reaction from the restaurants going through the competition, they were exhausted. And these are people that open restaurants. Some of them open multiple restaurants, and they were saying this is the hardest thing they've ever done. And there's no crazy stuff, no one's jumping out of planes or anything like that. It's just straight up restaurant cooking. And I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. We start with 16 restaurants, some better than others, and we get down to one. But it was great competition. Yeah.
And I guess that when you look across the United States, do you see a lot more restaurants out there? Do you see a lot more smaller restaurants? And
yeah, this is what's neat about this. It's not just high-end restaurants. We had a combination of barbecue places, some kind of new fast casual concepts without table service, some fine dining restaurants. It kind of ran the gambit. Mom and pop restaurants. One husband and wife team that basically opened a restaurant with their whole life savings and a couple credit cards. It was really, really great to see. And so what we tried to do is really look at the backstories and look at the people behind the restaurants as well. So the episode starts out with an interview. It was a half an hour, 45-minute interview that I conducted. Probably gets edited down to 2 minutes, but and just trying to understand why people are doing what they're doing. There's more to it. I think people want to understand the backstories, understand why people open a restaurant, what compels them to bang their head against the wall like that, and multiple times just keep doing it, and never quite having that lesson of insanity sort of getting in there. We just keep doing it, right. And so it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I don't know who said this, but food is the new art.
It's probably Mark Twain.
Was it Mark Twain?
He said everything.
Yes, definitely. I actually have the quote right here.
I don't know. I think food is the new craft.
Oh, wow. Talk about shameless plugs. So, okay. Food is the new art or the new craft, and I guess that's inspiring.
It's the new rock and roll.
It's the new rock
and
roll.
That's what I heard. I heard, chefs are. They would say chefs are new rock stars. My answer to that is I've hung out with a few, and no, we're not.
Okay. Well, as a rock star yourself, you would know something about that. Does everybody know that Tom plays an instrument? No? Oh, would anybody like to take a guess? If Tom were to play an instrument, what instrument would he play? Saxophone. No.
Someone said guitar. Someone said guitar.
Someone said guitar.
Yeah, I heard that.
So,
I do play. I have fun with it.
Yeah, you do. And I was lucky enough to attend the opening of River Park, one of his restaurants very close to my own house. Fabulous restaurant right on the East River. And after a wonderful reception, there's a band starting to play, and I recognized the lead guitarist front and center.
Well, I wasn't the lead guitarist. I was playing rhythm guitar. No, it's something I have fun doing it. So you were there, huh?
I was there.
Yeah.
You don't recognize me?
You were the guy in the front row screaming, huh?
I was.
Yeah, fanboy. All right.
Yeah, well, and here I am. So if chefs are the new rock stars, and this whole trend seems to be going younger and younger and younger, is it getting easier to open a restaurant? Is it now, are the economics of it, given how many people are out and about and what's happening in big cities and this new emerging food scene, is it easier?
I don't think it's any easier, especially in New York. I think it's getting harder. There's so many restaurants now, but also real estate prices are through the roof, and my prediction is that you're going to start seeing restaurants opening up on second floors, because I don't think we can afford ground floor space anymore. Unless it's a development, a development deal, you're working with a developer or a hotel or something. I think it's getting more and more difficult. I think that's why you're seeing, better restaurants in Brooklyn and Queens now, is because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. And so young people who don't, are raising some money, they're going out there and they're trying to get the best bang for the buck. And when real estate is, if it becomes more than 10% of your cost, your overhead, you can't make money, and it's starting to get very, very difficult in New York.
And that's actually a trend I think we've seen around the world. If anyone's been to Asia and Tokyo, the whole building could be even just all restaurants. You get in the elevator and it's always staggering off or staggering on. Right. It's really interesting. Right. So I imagine that some folks in the audience might have some questions. I think I'm going to start on this side. There we go.
Hi, Chef. Big fan of yours. I just actually dined at Colicchio & Sons on Friday for my birthday. I wanted to actually ask you, for all the seasons of Top Chef, what has been your worst dish you've eaten and best dish you've eaten?
I spit food out twice. Once was, I forget the guy's name, but we were in Las Vegas, and we were out in the desert, some shoot, and he served me this raw, I think it was cod or something, and it was it was 110 degrees, and it was around 11 o'clock in the morning, and this was like lukewarm, and it was disgusting, and it just immediately, I tried to hide behind a cactus, and they caught me actually spitting it out. I think it was season 2 where I was served a warm clam and lychee, and to me, it just like a gag reflex just immediate went off, and I actually was able to hide, and the camera wasn't on me, but that was really disgusting. One of the best dishes, Paul Key, who won the Texas season, who I think was the best chef we've ever had on the show, he did a simple dish of vegetables and dashi that was just so good. And it was just so simple and so clean. That always stands out as one of the best dishes I ever had on the show. Yeah.
Great question.
Here. Hi, Chef. My name is Kelly, and I work in food education here in New York. And I'm wondering what you think restaurants' role should be, if any, in food literacy and getting your customers to think about, the full picture of food and where it comes from.
That's a good question. And in fact, tomorrow there's a 2-day series of discussions out at Stone Barns, and one of the panel that I'm on is the role that chefs have to play in sustainable agriculture. So it's a very topical question. I think in the restaurant, I think there's a subtle way to get across what you're doing. So for instance, on our menus, we list the farmers that we work with, again, making that connection that we care about sustainable agriculture, we care about local food, we care about to know the people who we're purchasing from. We also have a line that all our meats are antibiotic free. And so I think you have a role to play in the restaurant as far as getting across, but it has to be subtle. You can't preach. You want a waitstaff that is literate in what you're doing in the restaurant, so they can answer questions when questions are asked. But I don't think it's something that you should force feed someone. A role that chefs play on a larger scale, when it comes to healthy food, There's three groups of people that people trust, and it's healthcare professionals, nutritionists, and chefs. And so I think that we have, if you're going to get more involved in education, or if you're going to get more involved in policy around food, I think that chefs have an obligation, number one, to themselves to make sure that they're getting good knowledge around these issues, and then to align themselves with various organizations that are getting that message out there and lending their voice to organizations. And so whether it's a group like one that I helped start called Food Policy Action, or whether it's a hunger organization like Share Our Strength, or some of the local food banks, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually lend your voice to the conversation. But I think that having a certain amount of base knowledge, for instance, there's obviously a debate around GMO labeling right now, and there is no science that says that GMOs are bad. And so chefs going out there saying that GMOs are unhealthy, I think that's a mistake. Now, my position on GMOs are that I want to see labeling because there's an issue my issue is the environmental impact of the way that we're using herbicides and pesticides on GMO crops. That's really depleting the soil of all nutrients. And so, and that goes to the problem that we're having with carbon. If we're concerned about the amount of carbon that's in the atmosphere, agriculture can fix this. We used to have, our soil used to contain 30% carbon. Now it contains about 4% because of the way we're farming. We're actually releasing these carbon into the atmosphere. So if you're talking about sequestering carbon, we could do that through better agriculture. And it's a very simple thing to do. So, but again, having a chef going out there saying, don't eat GMOs, they're going to kill you. That is just playing right into the hands of the people who are saying that we're anti-science and we don't understand. And so we need, if you're going to go out there and be vocal about these things, you have to do the work.
All right.
Hi, Chef. I think you go to cities like New York and San Francisco, and you're going to find good restaurants. It's not that difficult. But I was curious, as someone who's traveled across this country, what city have you found to have a really surprisingly good food scene that people might be surprised to know about?
Yes, that's a good question. So what cities are surprisingly good scenes? Well, what's interesting, food scenes, what's interesting now is we're having a very, very difficult time finding staff, kitchen staff especially, because it used to be where you would work in New York or Chicago, San Francisco, maybe LA, if you were trying to sort of gain knowledge as a young cook. Now you can work anywhere. There are great restaurants everywhere. Not surprising, I think one of the best food cities in the country is Charleston. Great restaurants, great food culture. So I'm not surprised now to find great food in most places. Cleveland, there's a great food scene in Cleveland. Florida finally is starting to have an independent food scene as opposed to the hotel food scene. So things are changing, in Miami, I should say. There are great restaurants in San Diego. There are it's just everywhere you go. St. Paul, there's great restaurants everywhere. So it's changed a lot. And, all these chefs who learn how to cook in some of these other cities, they're all going back home. I mean, we just, I'm forgetting a name here. Gavin Kaysen, who was the chef at Cafe Balut for years and years and years, went back to Minneapolis. That's where he's from, to open a restaurant. And he's one of the best chefs we had in New York. And so people are taking what they've learned in these big cities and moving back home and doing great stuff. And now it used to be where the products were only available in some of the larger cities. Now you can get product anywhere. You have great farmers and doing stuff all over the country. So it's changed. It's good to see. It's hard to get cooks, but pretty much everywhere you go, there's going to be a restaurant in town that's really good.
Actually, I have another question. I'm sorry if I'm cutting somebody off, but this past summer, I started spending an increasing amount of time up on the North Fork of Long Island, and I think you do also.
I have a house there, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a new food scene that's starting to happen out there.
And it's not a restaurant scene. It's a food scene.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah, it's very different. Also, I should say that, and I'm not plugging Bon Appetit, but they do a Best New Restaurant edition every year, and the majority of those restaurants are not from big cities. They're all over. Besides, so you're talking about restaurants, and I say this, I've been on the North Fork for 13 years now, yeah. And there was a period of a couple of years where we were renovating a house and we weren't going. And I went back there, and all of a sudden you got someone doing, Holly Browder, doing the most amazing eggs, and now she's doing chickens. You have Four Hands doing lamb. That's really amazing. You have, well, KK, actually, the woman just passed away. She had a biodynamic farm. And we have another woman who does 150 varieties of tomatoes. There's South Hole Fish Market, I think, is the best fish market I've ever been to.
Completely agree.
I bought my peconic bay scallops there on Saturday. So there's this food culture that's happening outside of restaurants that I think is more exciting than the restaurant culture. When you look out, you talk to a lot of young kids these days, they're not interested in they're interested in making stuff. They want to be beekeepers, they want to make honey. They want to cure hams. They want to be butchers. And so there's this whole movement of going back to food that's sort of outside of the restaurant culture that, to me, is the most exciting thing happening in food today.
That's great.
Good evening, Chef. I actually work in the industry, and when you were talking about saying that the mushrooms are gritty or wanting to send a dish back, that's a piece of advice I try to give to my friends all the time rather than yelping about it or tweeting about it later. Is there any other dining advice that you would give that you think people aren't following?
Yeah, I think too often I think that people go to restaurants and they think that they have to have this adversarial relationship with that restaurant. It's like they're going to go on Yelp and they're going to just tell everybody how bad it is. And they go in there with this idea they're going to have a bad time. And most restaurants, they want to make you happy. That's kind of what we're doing, whether it's through food or through service, however. So I think if there's something you want, let it be known and see how they deal with it. Don't, exactly right. Going on Yelp and ripping the restaurant apart, that's not going to help your meal. But if you have something that you don't like, something that, something is, the best, I tell you, one of the best service experiences I ever had. So I'm in Miami at a restaurant called Prime 112. It's a steakhouse. And it was during the Food and Wine Festival down there. It's crazy business, busy. And I go in and I order a steak medium rare. I'm with a friend of mine who was also my publicist, and we were having dinner. And I ordered a steak medium rare. It was a steak for two. And it came out, it was medium well. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy, because me sending something back it's very different than obviously somebody else sending something back. So I was like, and I know the owner. I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just going to deal with it. Waiter comes over, looks at the steak, and says, "You didn't order. That's medium well. You ordered medium rare." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, let me take it back." I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that." He goes, "No, I insist." He actually picked it up, went back, and 10 minutes later came back with a medium rare steak and just apologized and said, "I didn't have to send it back. That was great service and great hospitality." And I always sort of talk to my staff and use that as the example of how to do things right. I mean, they completely put me at ease, but I think if you get something that's not right or something you don't like, just call the waiter over. Don't make a big deal about it. Just say, "You know what? I really don't care for this," and see what they do. If they tell you you're wrong, then go on Yelp.
But I guess to that point, if they do something really great, you should go on a nationally televised program and say it.
Yes. Well, or whatever, however you want to get that across that they did this right. I mean, I think that's also part of it as well. I think that's people just need to take this experience back and say, this is my experience, and I want, if you want something on the side, if you're gluten-free, go to a restaurant. We offer gluten-free pasta. Don't go in there and go, "Oh, I know they're gonna give me a hard time about this." Or quite frankly, I would go in with my gluten-free package of pasta and say, "I'm gluten-free. Can you please make this for me?" and see what they do. I mean, it's still a big deal.
There'll be a small corking fee. I'm sorry. I think we have one more question back here.
I'm in no rush. Unless you have to go somewhere, I'm fine. We can answer a few more.
Okay.
Hi, Tom. My question is around the merging of food and technology. So if you think about something like Seamless Web or Open Table, or even Instagramming pictures of your food when you're at a restaurant, what are your thoughts on sort of technology being brought into the dining experience?
I think it's fine. The only thing, don't sit there for 20 minutes and take pictures of your food and then complain it's cold. But no, it's fine. Listen, I think that there's a lot more technology. I think some of the...
Sorry, just doing
selfie.
a
doing
moment.
selfie here. Okay.
technology in the dining room.
Yeah, I'm fine. I think there's some more exciting things coming. This idea of either Apple Pay or there's other programs like that where you pretty much go in, you make the reservation, you walk out, you don't see a bill, you just sign away. It's like the Uber of restaurants. I mean, to me, that's really exciting. But no, I think it's fine. I think anything that makes the dining experience an easier experience, I think, is worthwhile. Whether it's online reservations or whether it's, again, that sort of payment to make it easy. I think it's all fine. But taking the pictures, I just wish that some people would take better pictures, because sometimes they put something out there and it's a really bad picture, and it's like, wow, that looks terrible. But I don't, I think it's all great stuff.
So we need the folks at Instagram to make the great food photograph filter. There's
several filters, and some of them are better than others. Yeah, but it's some photographers are better than others, but no, it's all good. I don't understand why people complain about it. When you think about it, if you have an Instagram feed and you get it out to people, it's like free advertisement for your restaurant. Why are you complaining about this? I mean, I think it's all great.
All right. More questions? Oh, we do have one more.
Hi, Chef. What are your thoughts on the foraging trend, specifically in areas in urban environments where obviously we can't go out and forage for ourselves, or there aren't many restaurants, at least in New York, like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had 20 some odd years ago when I was at a restaurant called Mondrian. That was my first chef's job in New York. We had a forager in Seattle working for us, and so it's great to see. It's all of a sudden it's this huge trend. We actually have 2 working for us now, and I think it's great. But I think we're going to start seeing some problems with, I read an article recently that especially in the Pacific Northwest that a lot of these forests are just getting ripped apart by people going there and mushroom picking. And so I think we have to look at the environmental impact that it is having on these ecosystems when we're going there and pulling so much out of this particular ecosystems. But so I think it's great. Again, there's a lot of things that we're getting in the restaurants that are just really exciting and different, and from a competitive advantage from restaurant to restaurant, if you have someone that's working for you and bringing you these products, you have a bit of an advantage over another restaurant that's not doing it. So I think just in terms of trends, I think it's really good. But again, there is an environmental impact that comes along with it, and I think it's something that we need to start focusing on. It's like certain fish that they found was a good food source, like orange roughy. And you guys don't remember orange roughy because there is no more orange roughy, because they found this fish in deep water, fished it out without realizing the life cycle of this fish and when they actually are able to spawn and how old they are before they spawn. And so pretty much wiped out this entire species of fish. And so we've got to be careful because there is always an impact on our actions.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. This has been
Thanks.
a great pleasure.
This is fun.
Thank all of you.